Sugar Beet Queen Sam, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well now that I have this hat.
Real sugar for life.
Real sugar. You know what you should do? I don't know if we could get these, but if you could get glasses that are shaped like beets, and then like we could have like the crummy glasses, like little beet thing hanging out, I'd wear those. That's episode number 2. Let's get some glasses.
Let's do it. We actually have pens that there's a little sugar beet that floats inside of it, and we give them out like when we're on the hill in DC, and people love the pens. It's like a thing. I didn't bring you one. I'm sorry. Next time.
Next time. Look, I don't know a lot of things about this state. I also didn't know that sugar beets were like a huge thing here. And again, anybody who's been here 10 minutes, I'm sure knows, but like Matt's slow to the take. You and I got connected. I think you like made a comment or something on one video I did, and I clicked on it because whenever people make like insightful or meaningful comments, I'm like, oh, who's this person? Clicked on it. I was like, the Sugar Beet Queen. The fuck is sugar beets? Like
who is that?
Yeah. So I started asking her, I was like, hey, who's the Sugar Beet Queen? And everybody's like, oh, Sam? Oh, she's great. I was like, oh, maybe I should invite Sam.
Which like total joke, right? So my dad and my sister tease me like I'm a little bit obsessed with sugar beets, and they jokingly called me the Sugar Beet Queen. So I decided to fully embrace this personality. Created my little Instagram page so people can follow along with all my professional adventures in sugar beet land.
In sugar beet land. This is like Wreck-It Ralph when they go to like the candy land. Like, what's sugar beet land look like?
Well, sugar beet land is awesome. And you pointed out, and I don't think you're alone in not knowing about sugar beets in Idaho, but it is a big industry in Idaho. So it's $1 billion industry in the state. Yeah.
$1 billion?
$1 billion.
That's like 1/10 of all agriculture or something. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio-only platform, please jump down and give it a quick follow and a review. The Ranch Podcast is the only podcast in the state of Idaho that has access to this many Idaho leaders, and your support is greatly appreciated.
It's a big part of Idaho ag, right?
Wow.
And sugar beets play an important role to the state, but a lot of people don't know what they are. So in case you're wondering, and we talked about this earlier, they're white, they're not red. People think when I say I'm the beet queen, they think it's like the red beet that you buy at the store, right? That's not it.
Farmer, you fool. You remember that scene from The Office when Dwight's trying to buy the crystal wizard, and then like, I'm a beet farmer, you fool. And he's got like the bloody beet hands and stuff.
Not those
That's
beets.
Not you. Okay,
that's not it.
Not you.
So
fine.
They're actually a sugar beet. They're white actually, but they weigh like 3 to 5 pounds. They get planted. I know they're big. Like a sugar beet's big. So they're just tiny seeds planted in the ground, and then they grow all season and you harvest them, but they're a root crop. So the beet actually grows underground, and then it has like a canopy. So the canopy gets chopped off at harvest, defoliated, and then the beets are dug out of the ground. They're lifted out of the ground. So one sugar beet, and they're white, not red. They're white. Sugar's white, right?
Right. Yeah.
So one sugar beet on average is about 1 cup of sugar.
Wow.
I know.
What is the, okay. Molasses is a byproduct of sugar, but it was my understanding that it came as a byproduct of cane sugar. Like, do you get the same molasses style product from refining sugar beets?
Yes. So we also have molasses as a byproduct as well. And then we also have beet pulp. So what happens is after the sugar beet, after it's harvested, they get stored in piles all across our growing region. So have you seen like the massive mountains of sugar beets?
Well, I mean, apparently not, but...
Okay, well, around the state,
I didn't know they were white.
Well, I know.
Sam, listen to me. I'm here in this black box, like, all day long talking to me. I don't get out much. I want to come to Sugar Beet Land. You haven't invited me. Like, just have...
I'll take
come.
you. You're wearing the right hat. You
oh,
can
my
come.
God, I will fit right in. We're both Mexican, too, so that's good.
100%.
You're 50%, I'm 50%. We're on it. We don't speak Spanish, though. So,
by the way, my grandparents did immigrate here from Mexico, and they grew sugar beets. So over in eastern Idaho, which I think is kind of a fun part of the legacy, but when I got this job, I told my dad, hey, I think I'm going to go take this job and work for sugar beet farmers. And my dad's like, are you sure you want to do that? Because he remembers back in the day having to thin beets and pull weeds, totally different from how we produce the crop now. But he's like, I don't know, that's a good idea, Sam. And anyway, I ended up taking the job. I love it. Dad, he's been on a bunch of farm tours with me now, and he's like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. My grandparents immigrated from Mexico as well, and they grew kids. They did not grow sugar beets.
Well, my grandparents also grew kids. My dad's the youngest of 16 children.
Dude, nobody can beat a Mexican. Nobody.
Right?
Nobody. That's probably why there's such an large LDS faction. They're like, oh, these are our people. Let's have like 12 kids with them. There you go. Anyway,
I know.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. That conversation probably never happened, but you can imagine.
They needed help on the farm, right? Just kept having kids.
Okay. In reality, though, like Mitt Romney's family was from, like, his grandparents were from like a Mexican compound, like an LDS compound in Mexico, right?
I don't know.
I'm 99% sure that Mitt Romney's family has ties to, like, not in like any nefarious, it's not like they're cartels. They're like people that just were like, you know, the LDS community has a very painful history in the United States, and they spread out for a number of reasons, right? And it was my understanding that a portion of them were like, dude, let's try Mexico. Like, we're not going to be oppressed. We can go down there, you know, just live our lives, move on. And like, that's where like a big chunk moved. I don't know these things. It doesn't matter. Let's keep going back to the sugar beets. So the point is, I get to come. They're giant mounds. And anyway, once they're harvested, they're piled up.
Yes, they're stored in piles. And then once the factory's ready to process them and extract the sugar, they get trucked to one of the 3 factories that are in Idaho, and they're sliced. And then they go through a process to take the sugar out. But basically the beet pulp that's left, like the actual beet, the flesh of the beet gets dried. And then that's actually an animal feed product. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cattle and dairy cows. And actually racehorses.
Is it sweet? Like, is it a sweet pulp, or do they extract pretty much all the sweetness?
So we have gotten better and better at extracting all the sugar out of the beet. So it used to be a better feed product with a higher sugar content. So it was a better quality feed, but we've gotten more efficient at extracting all that sugar. But it's still a good high quality
fibrous pulp.
Yeah, it's still a high quality feed product.
God bless it, man. I'm a huge fan of beets. I did not like, I can't, like, I'm talking red beets. Like, I don't know that they're these crazy white beets. So there's always, whenever you go to like you ever go to like a taqueria and they have like the Cokes, the mini Cokes in glass bottles, and it's like pure cane sugar from Mexico, which is always awesome. Is there a distinction in the actual taste of beet sugar versus cane sugar, or is it legit like, no, we've reduced it down to this crystallized ingredient that is, you know, we just have a different extraction process?
Yeah, so they're identical. So, and I think that's a really great point too. So, sugar comes from 2 plants, so sugar beets and sugar cane. So across the country, we actually produce more beet sugar than cane sugar. So it's about 55% beet sugar, 45% cane sugar, and 2 different crops, right? But the end product is exactly the same. But if you think about it, like food, you know, vegetables, fruits, they're naturally sweet, right? Like if you bite into a strawberry, it's sweet because it has sucrose. So sugar beets and sugar cane just have a really high level of sucrose. So that's why it's commercially produced. So sugar beets contain like 18% sugar is their content. And that's why they're grown for sugar.
Is there any... Could you take one and like roast it and then just chomp into it like an apple? Like, is there any way to consume these outside of like, no, you gotta do this whole refining process?
Yeah, so you can't buy a sugar beet at the grocery store.
Probably why I've never seen one.
Nope, they're not in the store. So
why?
They're just because they're commercially produced to make sugar. Really, that's like their main purpose. So
this should be a Thanksgiving dish,
a specialty. Like, maybe at my house. If you come to my house for Thanksgiving, we'll have roasted
potatoes and sugar beet, like put all together. That sounds lit. I mean, people go through all kinds of pains to throw like marshmallows and brown sugar on top of like sweet potatoes. Like, why don't we have the sugar beets with the potato, like roasted veggie tray?
Well, I'll take you on a farm and we'll dig up a beet and we'll cut into it and you can try it. Yeah, it has kind of a funky taste. They're like crunchy, but it's definitely sweet. But personally, I think it's better off turned into sugar.
Have you ever tried to cook one?
No, I haven't actually.
Sam, we could be sitting on like the next greatest thing, like roasted sugar beets.
Should I start my own like culinary podcast where I try sugar beet dishes?
You do like sugar beet bread and stuff.
Oh, gosh.
I think that'd be great. Listen, I'm always like, what about this? People are like, you don't want to do that. I'm like, but it could be great. Like, for instance, do you know, to make whiskey, you have to make, it's my understanding you have to make beer first, or like bourbon or whatever. But essentially when you're doing any of the distilled spirits, you have to make an alcoholic mash first, and then you distill out, you know, the liquor, right, through a vaporization process. And somebody was like, oh yeah, you got to make beer first, and then once you make the beer, you can distill. I was like, well, is the beer good? They're like, you don't want to try the beer. Like, the beer is really disgusting. And I'm always the idiot. It's like, maybe it's really good. It's like, maybe it's not. Maybe you should just listen to the people who've tried and understand that it's not going to work out well for you.
But I feel like we should make like sugar beet vodka. They make potato vodka. Like I feel like sugar beet vodka could be the next thing.
Are you like a big vodka person?
It's okay. More of like a whiskey gin kind of girl.
Man, I'm a G&T guy. Have you ever tried there's a rock and rye? No, it's the company's, I think, Slow and Low. They sell it at the liquor stores, and it's like this pre-made like mix with like rock honey and a bunch of other things in it that it's essentially like an old fashioned. That's what somebody told me, because I poured them one. I was like, this stuff is really good. Like, try some. A couple of years ago, they're like, oh yeah, it's like an old fashioned. I'm like, I don't know what you just said to me, but like, it's really, really tasty. It's that and gin and tonic, man. Like, I can't do the vodka. It's not, I'm not like a big drinker in general, but like vodka just seemed, I don't know. I am not.
If it was sugar beet vodka, I'd drink it.
I think we should find out. I think we should get, like, there's got to be somebody who bootlegs in this area that we won't have on the podcast. But like, there's got to be somebody with like a distillery somewhere who's like, give me that stuff. I'll make something out of it. That'd be great. So $1 billion in Idaho, sugar beets. Do you remember, did you ever see Krispy Kremes? Did they ever make it to Idaho? Krispy Kreme donuts?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Like, yeah. I don't know. I wasn't here. Like, you just got in and out. Like, I don't know what kind of chains didn't make it up here. Okay. So, but like Krispy Kreme had a hot moment from like 2002 to like 2007 until people realized like, okay, one, these donuts aren't that good. And like the automated donut makers, like cool and everything. And by the way, they're not good for you. Like then, and like, I'm a Winchell's donut myself. Anyway, the point is that those came and went really, really fast. And sugar in general is something that obviously has stood the test of time over hundreds and hundreds of years. But there is a and during the 80s, especially in the low fat craze, sugar got like another hot tailwind where it's like, oh yeah, like you can eat sugar, you just can't eat fat, right? And there's a changing of the tides, as it were, kind of coming through that. Like, where does that factor in with sugar beets? Is that something you're concerned about, or is predominantly like the actual real sugar and like less high fructose corn syrup? Because that's the big one that people talk about. Like, what do you see coming around the corner with that?
Yeah. So with the Trump administration, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again with RFK, right? That's a huge movement. So, I mean, our official position on sugar is, sugar is part of a healthy and balanced diet, but, I don't think that you should eat it in excess, have it in moderation. And I think that's true of everything, right? Alcohol, anything else. So, the thing I'll say about sugar is it's a natural ingredient. It comes from plants. Like we just covered this, sugar beets and sugar cane. So real sugar, it's a natural ingredient. And, love it or hate it, it's actually in like 70% of packaged foods. So pretty much anything you buy has sugar in it. It is an essential ingredient in our food supply. And not just because it makes things sweet, right? It has other properties in food, right? It balances acidity, it adds bulk, it has preservation properties as well. So I think sugar does play a really important role in our food supply. But again, it's all in moderation, right? I would never sit here and say, go eat a bazillion candy bars that are full of sugar, right? That's just not good for you.
Yeah, you're definitely not somebody who eats nothing but sugar all day. I'm just going to throw that one out there. No. I don't know anything about you. I just met you. I'm just going to say, well, I'm like that. That was the whole nature of preservatives, right? That they were able to use high sugar concentrations to preserve things like berries, like strawberries and whatnot. Like that's where the preserves came from, right? And preserves are different than jams, which are different than jellies, which is weird. But like if you get a classic, like, oh, this is a preserve, then it's fruit with high concentrations of sugar in it to make sure that it lasts a long time.
Yeah, which is great. Like I said, I mean, sugar plays an important role in our food system, right? And preservation allows you, food to last longer.
Right.
It's great. So, I think sugar is essential, and we've seen, folks reformulating products, right, to have zero sugar in it, right? So they're using artificial sweeteners and things to do that, or have, no calories in them. And I think we're seeing artificial sweeteners pop up in places where people don't expect, in food products that people don't know. And also, artificial sweeteners, like nobody knows what they are. When you read the names on labels, people don't really know what that is. So sugar is a natural ingredient that it would take several industrial additives to replace. So I think sugar is a great natural ingredient, and it just plays an important role.
Yeah, and everything in moderation. Like, dude, my wife makes this cast iron pan cookie. Oh my God. Like the pan is this big, right? And the cookie is this thick. She gave me some last night. We've had this cookie for like a week because it's so big. It's like, a metric ton of cookie, right? And she makes it and like we don't eat. Listen, my boys, I have 3 boys. They're 13, 10, and 8. And you can imagine their energy level, right? So they're not digging on the cookie on a regular basis, but like we'll get little pieces. And my boys have actually, we've trained them really well and trained their palates really well. If you give them a full cupcake, they won't be able to finish it. Like they just can't. They're like, it's too rich. It's too sweet. They do enjoy a piece of cookie, and we have cookies. Like we ate cookie last night, but we each ate like a little tiny piece of it and we shared it. Oh my gosh. We did the Olympics at our house, like in the middle of summer, and it was just us. There were 5 of us, and we set up all these different Olympic events on Sunday. And it was like one of them was the long throw, but it was throwing a soccer ball from across the yard into the basketball hoop. And my 8-year-old got it on the first try and nobody else got it. Like nobody, we each had like 24 tries. He literally slammed it on the first one. And then we had like ping pong. We had all these other things. And each time we went through an event, we did a whole Olympic ceremony, but the medals were Rice Krispie treats of varying sizes. So the gold medal was like this big, and then the, silver, and then bronze and we played the Olympic music and videotaped it and stuff. We had that fun. Like sugar has a place in my house as a fun thing, but it all comes down to moderation. It's not the type of sugar consumption I experienced when I was a kid where we had, it's like, that like creamer pour thing at like cafes. Like we would just have that on our table, or like the syrup pour where you pull back on the thing. And I would take grape nuts. No joke. It was ridiculous. Like you ever done this with grape nuts where you let them get like soak in the milk a little bit? Yeah, it's the play. Oh, yeah. So this was the trick though. I had a strategy. Pour the grape nuts in, pour the milk in, and then pour the sugar on top immediately so that the sugar dissolved in the milk and then got picked up by just a sugary mash. It's like, that was not a good idea. Like that was excess sugar consumption. Like that was a dangerous thing. But to your point, like alcohol, like you can have a drink, just don't have 10 and don't have drinks every single day, and in an attempt to get, what I like about sugar? It has a negative feedback loop, right? Like you have sugar highs, you have sugar crashes. Okay. You gain a lot of weight. Like you have feedback loops that you have to make a decision about how you want to live your life to be like, do I like this or do I not? Like, I don't want to gain a lot of weight. And so I don't eat a lot of sugar. I also don't have like, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. But you get that feedback. I'm really like Ozempic. Like I'm really worried that everybody taking Ozempic, it's like you want the rose without the thorns. Like you should have a negative feedback loop with like, don't eat too much or don't eat the bad things or you'll gain weight and you don't like that. And that will drive you back to eating better things. And sugar has that. Like it's not like artificial sweeteners where you like get the benefit by like dumping this chemical, you get the sweet sensation and you don't pay a price for it.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, if you look at the trends, I think sugar consumption in America is actually going down, but obesity is still on the rise. So, it's hard to say what the cause of that is, but I do think folks live a sedentary lifestyle, right? They're not active. They are eating a lot of calories and things. So again, I think to live a healthy lifestyle, you have to be active and you need to have everything in moderation and have balance.
When you say sugar is going down, do you count like just the sugar cane or the actual sugar crystal, or are you counting like high fructose corn syrup? Because I think like we get Cokes now, right? And they have like high fructose corn syrup in them or something, right? And you got to get the little Mexican bottle, glass bottle to get like the actual cane sugar Cokes, right? Are you saying like, hey, look, the crystal itself, the sugar crystal is going down in consumption, whereas we may be jacking up like high fructose corn syrup and other things?
Potentially. I'm not sure. I just know that real sugar is decreasing. Our consumption's decreasing. I'm not sure about other artificial sweeteners, but I just think sugar gets a bad rap. So we watch that closely on consumption, and it is going down. Yeah.
How long has it been decreasing?
I think it's been decreasing like over the last decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had sugar in like 1920. We didn't have an obesity problem in 1920, right? Like at some point we have to look at the entire thing. Because Michael Pollan, are you familiar with the food critic, Michael Pollan, ag critic? Yeah. Wrote several books. He's a great journalist, but he wrote in one of his books that Americans in particular like to hyper focus on one ingredient or one mechanism and try to make that responsible for everything, right? So we have people that are like, oh, fat is bad, and they eliminate all fat. Or they have like, oh, sugar's bad, and they eliminate all sugar. They like say, oh, these things. And we essentially get away with like, if we just eliminate this one thing, says the doctor, then like we'll all be okay. And in reality, it's like, okay, it's not just sugar. It's not just fat. It's quantities of both. It's combinations of both. It's frequencies of both. It's lifestyle. It's auxiliary things like, okay, it's not sugar and it's not fat, but it's alcohol. How does that factor into your not only sedentary lifestyle, but your metabolism and like all of these different things? Whereas we really want it to be one thing. We really want the villain to be fat, or we really want the villain to be sugar. We really want the villain to be, you know, whatever it might be. And it's like, that's, as you're saying, it's like, okay, but even if we're decreasing, then we have obesity increasing.
For sure. And I think that's why you see all these trendy fad diets, right? You know, keto has had its moment. I think, did you do the keto diet? Did I listen? Did I listen to an episode?
Oh,
you were a keto guy.
You know what's not fair? You may know things about me that I've told. I don't know anything about you except that you're the sugar beet queen. Yeah, dude. Okay, this is what I did. This was really funny. I'm like, I've never had a problem with my weight. Okay, so I'm 182 pounds at the time. I'm 6'2". I'm like, I just want to know if I could eat just a dump truck of fat and still run like 25 miles at the drop of a hat. So I just do this like ridiculous keto thing. And I'm like cutting off only fat and eating. It was so ridiculous. And then like, it was fine for a month. And I'm like, I can't do this. You know what the real problem was? I had a green smoothie every morning. My wife and I would do kale, spinach, chard. We do blueberries, strawberries, banana, carrot, orange, the whole bit. And we like slam down the smoothie. Well, when you're doing keto, you're not doing your green smoothie. Too much sugar, right? So I was like, I know. I'll just take the kale, spinach, and chard. So every day I would blend a blender full of water and those greens, like pissed off kale and Swiss chard. And I would drink it. And I swear to God, I was like the burn down my throat and in my stomach. And I'd be like keeled over. I'd literally be like,
Matt,
it's
like why?
It's so healthy.
So how did you feel like doing that diet?
I wanted
like
to die.
Yeah, see,
I was like, I'm so healthy though.
But miserable, right?
I wasn't healthy. I got so sick. That's my point. After about a month, and I don't know if it was just the keto. I don't know if it was a combination of the greens. I got so sick. Like, I'm an avid athlete. I could work out for 3 hours straight. No problem. A month into that, I would get a half an hour in and I would crawl to the corner of the room, like collapse. Literally, I've never been more sick in my life. And I think it was a combination of those greens. Like, I don't even think it was the keto's fault. I think it was just like the kale's fault. Like, kale used to be a garnish until 10 years ago when people convinced you that like it was so terrible to eat that it had to have some nutritional value. It's not even bioavailable. Like, you eat the kale and the kale's like, no, not today, Santa. And like, it knows how to prevent itself from getting eaten in the wild. And it does the same thing. Like, there's a reason it tastes bad. Anyway, that's my thing. Yeah. So we have fad diets. Back to your point.
Yes. Fad diets, and they don't last, right? But again, you have to do what works for you, right? You know, so for me and my family, you know, we try to be active. We try to eat as healthy as we can, right? It's hard with two parents working. We do the best that we can, but you know, that's my advice.
Yeah.
Moderation.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, Andrew Mickelson, about the high water intake that potatoes have, because he's done a whole lot with plant respiration. And ultimately the question is, look, are the plants that you're dealing with, are they getting sufficient water? And people have always assumed that there's a direct correlation between more water and more water spraying out into the earth, and then more water getting pulled up by the plants. But the problem comes when you have different types of soils, loams, sands, all of these different things. He's like, well, you know, like this is complex. Like, we got to figure out how much in what intervals, you know, and then look at the plants and really figure out like, okay, how much water is in them and how much water are they losing, like all of these different things. And he had mentioned corn and potatoes specifically as being high water. Like, where does the sugar beet fall in there?
Yeah, so sugar beets they also use quite a bit of water. We're actually one of the first crops in and one of the last crops out. So we have a long growing season. So I would say that we're also a very thirsty crop. Our industry does a ton of research on water recommendations and when to water. That's a huge question that we're grappling with. And as new technologies come out, right, like new irrigation systems and precision ag, it's something that we're really focused on because, our growers want to be good stewards of the land. They only want to use as many resources as they have to grow a crop.
Yeah. So how many acres do you grow?
So across,
as the sugar beet queen?
Well, I grow as the queen. I grow 0. But the wonderful sugar beet farmers that I represent across Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, we have just over 180,000 acres of sugar beets.
That's a lot of acreage. How does that compare to the rest of the United States? Are we essentially the hub for sugar beets?
So Idaho is number 2. Number 1's Minnesota. So the Red River Valley, Minnesota, and North Dakota, they're about double what we grow in Idaho. But we are number 2. So like I said, sugar beets are a super important crop in Idaho.
Okay, so if you're not toiling in the earth, like why did you fall in love with this particular crop?
Yeah. So my background, I actually started out in fundraising, super random. So I would ask people for money.
Hi, we should talk later because I don't make money with this. Long-term problem.
Hold on to your wallet, Matt. Right. But anyway, I worked for the University of Idaho for our College of Ag and Life Sciences. And so in that role, I got to work with a lot of different commodity groups and, helping them, getting funding for various projects and research and things. And I just kind of fell in love with sugar beet growers. I just thought they're these really cool, just down to earth people. I just kind of fell in love with the crop. And when this job opened up about 2.5 years ago, some sugar beet growers, actually like coolest people ever, Ben and Sam Marshall, they're from Jerome. They actually suggested that I should do this job just because, they knew that I love ag. I have a passion for it. And I've always loved politics. I've always just kind of followed it from afar. So I jumped at this opportunity. These commodity group jobs, they don't come open very often. So I was super excited to land this role. And I honestly, I feel like it's a huge privilege to represent sugar beet growers. They're just the best people.
Now, the sugar beet industry that you represent is essentially like an upside down funnel, right? So like your grassroots, literally, you take information and aggregate it from across the growers and, Idaho and then other states. It all pools to the top. And then people come to you and say, and then you essentially figure out like, okay, if this legislation passes, that's going to be a problem. Like, and if you could get this legislation, that would actually be beneficial, but it's essentially educating people that are completely removed from sugar beets and have no idea what the deal is to be like, okay, listen, just 2 minutes. Like, this is what we need. This is what you're doing. And I know you like this idea, but it's going to have these unintended consequences. Like, please don't do that. That's essentially like, oh my God, you don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah. So one of the main roles of our association is to lobby not only on a state level, but on a federal level as well. And the great thing about Idaho is we have a citizen legislature. So these folks are part-time legislators. They all have lives and jobs. And so, I think it's a benefit to have folks like me that are in the Capitol because we're supposed to be the expert in our subject area, right? So my subject area is sugar beets. And so, when an issue comes up at the Capitol, I'm always reviewing everything, weighing, how will this impact our industry? And then kind of making a choice. Do we oppose or do we support different pieces of legislation on both a state and a federal level?
Gotcha. When you're dealing with things like, I think it's Representative Redmond that's talking about taking sugar, or excuse me, not sugar, but candy and sodas off of the SNAP program. Is that something that you guys are concerned about? Or is it more of just, hey, look, like we're going to be fine growing sugar. Like it doesn't have to be on the SNAP program. Like there are plenty of places, like everybody likes a box cake. Like, it's not a big deal.
So we're neutral on that issue. Obviously we follow it, but I just don't think it would be a great stance for sugar to take like, oh yeah, we really think that soda and sugary filled candy should be part of the SNAP program. So I think that's a really bad look for sugar to be opposing a measure like this. So we would stay neutral on that bill, but definitely following it.
That's really fair.
Are you surprised to hear somebody that represents sugar beet farmers say like, hey, think about it. Ag, like we're super common sense, right? No. Like it just doesn't make sense for that to be part of SNAP probably, right?
I am not surprised to hear somebody in ag being common sense because the most common sense people I've ever met are in ag.
Yes.
And they're fair and they're normal. That's not to say everybody's fair and normal, but like, no, I'm not surprised at all. Like, and there was a classic case of, I believe it was Heinz ketchup. There was a hot minute when there was a movement in a certain state to replace vegetables on lunch meals with like a packet of ketchup. And they're like, well, it's tomatoes, you know, and Heinz ketchup classically came forward and was like, don't do this. This is terrible. And like, that's corporate responsibility. Right. And it's a funny position that you're in. You're like, we have to stay neutral. Like, we can't oppose it. That's not a good idea. And we also can't support it because we're not going to weigh into like what people should be eating. We're in the business of producing. And so we will stay neutral and let people work this out and just trust that like we are presenting a good enough product and people have free agency to engage in it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So bottom line is you love sugar. What is your favorite sugary recipe? Come on, as the queen, you gotta have wow. Is it a caramel apple? Like, what is it?
I'm a huge lemon meringue pie gal. God, that's it for me.
Oh my God. Do you make the meringue yourself? Like, are you a baker?
Okay, I am a terrible baker, you guys. I hate to say that. Actually, it's my husband that's the baker. He bakes everything. He makes like homemade pie crust. But my dad makes the best lemon meringue pie ever. Like when I go visit, I'm like, Dad, can you please make me a pie?
Do you know what goes into making the meringue? Like I watched this video because my wife is a big baker. I'm like you. I don't know anything. And one day I was like, I can do this, whatever. And I watched this video on YouTube with this gal making a lemon meringue pie, and she's like whipping the eggs. She's like, yeah, you got to wait till the tips are just right. Like it's pulling off the thing. I was like, what?
It's like a total science.
A total and it's a feat. Like you're dancing with the egg whites and like trying to just like spot little telltale signs of like just the right consistency. I'm like, I'm out.
I don't have enough patience for that. So.
I don't think I'm smart enough for it. Like I don't even know if I don't even think it takes a long time. Like I just don't my head doesn't work that way. Yeah. So lemon meringue is your jam?
Lemon meringue.
God bless it. So when you're out of the growing season, what do you do?
So our association, we have 3 main parts of our mission. So first and foremost, it's to educate people about sugar beets. So I am out doing a bunch of stuff like this, you know, just spreading awareness, giving presentations, talking to kids. Something that I'm really excited about, we're working with University of Idaho Extension to create a curriculum for school-aged kids, 3rd through 6th grade, to teach them about what a sugar beet is and where their food comes from. Because, you know, my kids, they go to school just north of the Nampa sugar beet factory, and their friends don't know that in that factory they make sugar. And if kids could get excited about anything, it's sugar, right? Like, yeah. So I'm pumped about that kit that we have coming. And then the other thing that we do is promote research. So I'm, you know, always going to research meetings and trying to figure out what's happening in our industry that's going to help move it forward.
What are the things holding your industry back? I mean, like sugar's had its heyday for like 300 years? Ever since like the French aristocracy got like a regular supply of sugar, and then there was like, let them eat cake.
Yeah,
like, you guys are doing fine. Like you've been okay, right?
Yeah, I think like every crop, you have your challenges, right? There's always going to be new diseases and new pests that are coming online. And so we've got to have solutions for growers. You know, our industry always has to be adapting and changing, and we're always looking at new technologies because you have to, right? You have to adapt or you'll cease to exist.
So with the Make America Healthy again, I know you're saying, hey, look, we have an obesity problem and we can have a decrease in sugar consumption and people are still gaining weight and still very unhealthy. What are you afraid, or excuse me, not afraid, but are there concerns that there will be regulation or legislation coming down that's going to like hamper the sugar beet industry or like hammer on you guys?
Yeah, I think at a federal level, I think there's concerns about front of package labeling, you know, that say that this product has added sugars, because I just, you know, that really doesn't tell the whole story about a product, right? I think, you know, calories, there's other things that consumers should be aware of. So I think that's something that we watch really closely, is that front of label packaging, just because I don't think it tells the full story. And just because a product has added sugars, you know, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad, right? So that's something that we're watching.
And just because it doesn't have added sugars doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
Right. Like let's not, to what you're articulating, it's like to pick one ingredient or one thing out and do front of label when you already have that information on the back. Again, if you were saying, hey, remove it from the back, I'd have a problem with that. But after a while, it's like, look, I'm presenting the information. Like, what do you want me to do?
For sure. And I think some other things with RFK that we're tracking closely that we're also worried about, he's made some statements about being anti-pesticide and then also being anti-GMO. So those are 2 huge things that impact the sugar beet industry too, that we're watching, a little concerned about too. So we'll see.
Okay. The GMO and the pesticide. Like, I have a friend, Saul, from high school. We were used to be friends. Anyway, I got a hold of him like 10 years ago to ask him about like organic versus conventional, GMOs, things like that. And his position, he's got a PhD in chemistry. He works for like Lawrence Livermore Labs. Very, very bright guy. He came back and he's like, listen, he's also Indian. He's like, one of the things you have to realize is how many people are you looking to starve by eliminating GMOs? And that was not my position. I wasn't saying we should do that. He was just like, this is what you're really talking about. So if you're talking about it in the abstract, you're like, we have GMOs. I don't know if they're safe. Oh, but like 1 billion people are alive because we have, higher rice yields or things of that nature. You're like, okay, that's a thing. You have these miracles of science in genetically modified crops that we have all overwhelmingly benefited from. And then there's a portion of our world population that has come full circle and said, the things related to this type of science, we don't necessarily like. Right. And again, it's my understanding there is no nutritional disparity between a non-GMO crop and like if you take a GMO apple versus a non-GMO apple, there's no nutritional disparity between these things. It's not like the GMO apple is like terrible or whatever. The point is you start down this path of how shall we dictate people can grow food? Not how shall we enable the consumer, but how shall we dictate people can grow food? That really worries me. I'm all about freedom. And like, again, I'm not somebody who drinks a lot. I don't smoke cigarettes at all. Like I don't eat a lot of sugar, but I believe these things should exist in our stores and people should have freedom to make their decisions.
Yeah, I agree. And you bring up really important points, right? So the world population continues to grow and we continue to lose farm ground. So we have got to be more efficient with the ground that we have. So how do you do that? Well, through technology. And so in 2005, we were authorized to use genetically engineered sugar beet seeds. So they're Roundup resistant. So it has a trait in it that when you spray Roundup on it to kill weeds, it doesn't kill the sugar beet. And really what's that has allowed us, it's improved our yield per acre. And it's also more sustainable because farmers are using less passes through the field, right? So less product is being sprayed, less passes through the field. That's less fuel. And it's allowed our industry to be more efficient. And by the way, once the sugar beet goes through the process and the sugar is extracted, there's no trace of GMO material in that sugar. It's identical to cane sugar. So I think that's another really important piece of the story that people are missing.
What is it, glyphosate that people worry about in Roundup?
Yes, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup.
Okay. Is there any trace of glyphosate in the sugar that comes out?
No.
Okay. My point is, again, come back to freedom. And maybe that's a really ignorant position. Like, I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I barely knew that glyphosate was related to like Roundup, right? Like I don't know these things, but what I do know is I like the idea of people having freedom. Now, that doesn't mean that we have like all the food dyes, right? Like there are things that are dangerous in our community that in our food supply that we don't tolerate, right? There are other things that are very dangerous that we put warning labels on. And I'm always very hesitant to take that nuclear option and say like, oh, it's a good idea to remove this completely. It's like, well, why? Right. And, again, for some things like really cancer, you take out food dyes, right? What was it, like red dye 10 that got recently, prohibited. Okay. But then we can go to the liquor store and buy 151 alcohol, right? Like vodka. I think it's vodka, right? Like why that? Do you have like any insight into why we come after the food things, even when they could be labeled appropriately?
I'm not sure. I think that we put targets on certain things, and GMO has been huge. And I think people don't understand it. I mean, have you seen like the reporters that have gone out and asked people, hey, are you pro or anti-GMO? And people are like, oh, GMOs are the worst thing ever. And then they ask them, well, what does GMO stand for? And they don't even know. They don't even know what a GMO is, right? So I just think the public is really misinformed. But I agree with you. Consumers should have choices, right? If you're concerned about dyes in your food or whatever else, then just don't buy those products. But it shouldn't be, we should have free choice when you go to the store. As a consumer, you have that power.
Scandinavian swimmers. Have you ever seen these things? No. I think they're Trader Joe's. They're the Trader Joe version of Swedish fish.
Okay.
And my wife, had been hot on red dye 40 for some time. And she was like, I don't like red dye 40. Now, me being an Indian, I'm like, whatever, I don't know, Swedish fish, right? But she would get the Scandinavian swimmers, which are like the same gooey, chewy like snack, just minus the red dye 40. And they have that at Trader Joe's. Like, she knew she didn't want it. She had an option. She went and purchased an alternative. And I like the little crabs just fine. They're like lobsters and like other, like, I think there's like a dolphin or something. So it's not just Swedish fish. But like, yeah, to your point, it's like we have readily accessible alternatives to things that people don't like.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Sam.
And that's great about America.
God bless America. It's the best. Is there anything else that people should know about sugar beets?
So I think one other area that
Besides the sweet hat I'm wearing.
I know, I love it. You're
With
real
sugar.
I know. You're part of the club now.
Oh my God.
Team Beet.
This is all I needed. Team Beet. Next time when you come in, can you just bring a beet so we can have the beet on the table? I want to
I think we should cut it open and
I don't think I should.
let's do like a live tasting. I think that'd be great. I'm here for it.
Terrible. I'm sure it'd be terrible. Have you ever bitten one?
Yes.
Like a raw one?
Totally.
Oh, I thought you said you never. Oh, you've never cooked with them.
I've never cooked one, but I've gone into a field and cut it open and
Is it good?
tried it out.
It's earthy. Is it
Yeah.
earthy?
Yeah. No, it is. It has an earthy taste. It's definitely sweet, but no, it's kind of weird, but let's do it.
Let's do it.
Better
God
yet,
bless
like
it.
let's go to a sugar beet field
Let's go to a sugar beet.
and then you can do it in a field.
Let's go do an interview in a field next time. I'll bring
Do
the
it.
camera.
And you can interview a farmer. They would love it. One of our beet growers.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I want to go on a crop duster.
That'd be
Can
cool.
you get me in a crop duster?
I don't know any crop dusters, but I'm sure we can.
Didn't you just say they
arrange
had to
it.
make passes over fields?
I mean,
somebody's
like
passing
a
over
tractor
fields.
sprayer.
Oh,
Yeah.
Not Dusty Crop Hopper. Okay.
No, love Dusty Crop Hopper.
Love Dusty.
Planes.
Good luck,
Great
there,
movie.
Dusty. Great movies. Did you see Fire and Rescue?
Yes.
Yeah, dude.
It's
Fire and
popular
Rescue
in
is
our
the best.
house.
Oh my God, it's the best. I cry every time. The planes, and then cars are great. Did you see Cars 2?
I've seen like you're talking to the mom, 3 little kids. Like
we never watched Cars 2 because they like sold out and made Tomato like the spy with rockets and stuff. I'm like, I'm not about that life. Like, can you just
it's
give me
not
Cars
as
1 and
good.
Cars 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see Moana 2?
We haven't seen it yet.
Don't see it.
It's bad.
It's going to taint your thoughts of Moana. It's not good. Like, they just miss it. Like outside of Ace Ventura 2, nothing ever got better. Like Dumb and Dumber was not better than Dumb and Dumber 2 was not better than Dumb and Dumber 1.
Have you seen Frozen 2?
I let that go. I did it.
You're killing me.
Actually, no, I did see Frozen 2 when she pulls up on the horse to stop the flood in the fjord. Yeah.
Yeah, but also,
that was a hot minute.
But in the movie, like they had to breach the dam. Isn't that?
They did.
Yeah.
They breached
So
the dam.
we watched it in theaters, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is like propaganda for kids to breach dams. I'm like, this is an anti-ag message.
They also, the Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 were the only movies ever to popularize off-key singing.
Totally.
I'm like, "Ah," like I can't even do it. It's terrible.
I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah, let it go. Like let it go. Like, ugh, I can't. Yeah, it's the worst. It makes my skin crawl. Anyway,
It's my daughter's
What were we talking
favorite,
about?
so I'm not gonna hate on it. She's gonna watch
Frozen?
this. Yeah, she loves Frozen. So
I think I
Say it's
swore
great.
like a minute ago. You can't show her this interview. I'm doing a terrible job here. I didn't know that. These are. I always mark explicit. Don't show them these to your kids. Like, who knows what people say in these episodes? Whatever.
you never know.
Yeah, we'll rip some good clips. Anyway, so anything else we need to know?
Okay, so the other thing I want to mention, we do lobby on a federal level, and I want to talk about a really important piece of legislation for our industry. That's the Farm Bill. Are you familiar with the
Yes.
Farm Bill?
I have been told that the Farm Bill is important, and people have explained to me. But me being the idiot I am, I've like, okay, just do it again.
Okay, so the Farm Bill is like this all-encompassing legislation. So we have sugar beets and sugarcane Title I commodity. So within that, we have sugar policy, and that's an incredibly important piece of legislation to our industry. Honestly, we do more at a federal level just because if that program were to ever go away, like our domestic industry would literally cease to exist. So what this policy does is it authorizes the federal government to provide loans to our sugar beet processors. And across the country, every single sugar beet processor, it's a co-op. So they're owned by the sugar beet farmers. You have to own shares to grow sugar beets. Interesting system, right?
Wait, back up. So like you couldn't hire me just as a farmer to come do a field. Like I would have to have some portion ownership.
You have to own a share to grow an acre of sugar beets.
Why?
So, and this is part of like sugar policy, but it's set up as like a market allocation program. And I think it's great that they're grower owned, right? All of the sugar beet cooperatives across the country. So basically the USDA has authorized our cooperative that is here in Idaho, Amalgamated Sugar Company. So they're a 22 million hundredweight. That's how much sugar that they can produce. And so basically the federal government is authorized to loan the cooperative money, which this is important because when the sugar beet comes to the factory, like it's not just instantly turned into sugar, right? But the farmer still needs to be paid for their sugar beets. So they get the loan, they pay the sugar beet farmer, and then as the sugar is made and sold, then they pay back the loan to the government with interest. So people think that sugar policy is like a subsidy program, and it's not. It's a zero cost program to the taxpayers, but it helps our sugar beet farmers incredibly. So that's such an important piece of legislation. So actually in a couple of weeks, I'm going to Washington, D.C. with a group of sugar beet farmers, and we're going to go lobby for the Farm Bill.
That's wild. Okay, so bottom line is, in the absence of those loans for the producer, for the processor to actually pay off the farmer immediately and then be able to process, sell at market, and then pay back, in the absence of that, the entire sugar mechanism comes to a grinding halt.
Right. And then the other thing that USDA does is they monitor all the sugar supply in the country. So we actually don't produce enough sugar to keep up with consumption. So between beets and cane, we only produce 70% of the sugar that's consumed. And so we have to import sugar. The United States is actually one of the largest sugar importers. And so USDA monitors how much sugar is within the United States. And then if supply kind of gets low, then they're allowing more imports to come in. And basically, again, this protects the domestic industry from just like a flood of sugar coming in and tanking the price. So that's all part of this program to help protect the domestic sugar industry.
That's wild. Are you concerned at all about like the Doge coming in and killing part of the farm bill that supports you guys?
I think that is a concern because, and I'm not sure, I can't remember off the top of my head what the price tag of the farm bill is, but it's a big price tag, the farm bill. So I do have concerns about Doge and, fiscal conservatives looking at that price tag and, wanting to kill that bill. And of course, it's not just the farm piece that's part of it. It's, food assistant benefits, all that. That's all in the farm bill. So it's a really massive piece of legislation. There's been talk about separating those out. But I think there's good in keeping it together. This really is a bill about feeding America. So, I mean, it makes sense that they are together. But yeah, Doge is a concern. It's going to be interesting to follow that.
Do you think that there will be is there discussion of tariffs on sugar imports that could perhaps positively affect your industry?
So it's possible. We have 40 countries that have market access to the United States, and those are all through various trade agreements. And so tariffs, could potentially impact some of those relationships. But I think, ultimately the bigger concern is, anything that we're trying to import that farmers need, like fertilizers and other products that we import that the farmer needs. I think that ultimately the farmer could be hurt, but I know that President Trump loves rural America and he loves farmers. So I'm hopeful that he keeps that in mind when he's making these policies, and that, hopefully our farmers can be protected, because right now, they're operating in just a really tough economic environment. Input costs are skyrocketing right now, and then prices right now for commodities aren't doing really well. So our farmers are really working on really razor thin margins right now.
What are the inputs going into sugar beets?
So sugar beet seed, fertilizer, fuel, and then, just land rent too. I mean, that's an input, irrigation, all those things, all those expenses to grow a crop.
Yeah, the variability of fuel cost. I heard years ago that this guy was talking about the difficulty with, he was talking about the difficulty of investing. I don't know how to invest. Like, I'm not a guy. And he was just having this conversation. He's like, yeah, like you think investing in Southwest Airlines, or people think investing in Southwest Airlines would be a good return. But in reality, to effectively invest in Southwest Airlines, you have to predict fuel cost over the next 5 years, which you will never be able to do. And again, when you're dealing with something that's so dependent on fuel as air travel is, you have no capacity to actually understand what's going to go on with that stock. And I had not realized that farming was actually kind of the same thing. Like you have water, you have fertilizers, but even the fertilizers that we get from, international suppliers are tied obviously to fuel consumption. And then you have all the machinery that goes into it. So I have to imagine as fuel goes up in cost, it's like, it just comes right out of your pocket.
Oh, 100%. And farmers, I think there's so much that goes into farming, right? They're not just agronomists trying to grow a crop, but they're businessmen, right? Businessmen and women that are having to make these decisions and hedge their bets and do the best to sell crops, right? All the decisions that they have to make. It just right now, it's a really tough environment for them to operate in. And that's really why we need a farm bill, because that's our safety net, and we need a stronger safety net for our farmers.
Man, that's intense. When will we know about the farm bill? Because a couple people have talked about this. Like, when does this get passed?
Yeah, so the farm bill's up for reauthorization every 5 years. So it was up for reauthorization in 2023, and Congress failed to act on it. And so it's just living under a 1-year extension. So it got extended to 2024, and then it got extended through 2025. So the current one, it expires September 30th of this year. And we're hopeful that Congress will act on it, here in the next 6 months, that we'll see a new farm bill. We've seen a draft of it. The House Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson, has released his text of the farm bill, and we love it. It's phenomenal. It has improvements to the sugar program and other areas that would greatly impact our farmers. So we would love to see that piece of legislation move. So that's what we'll be back there lobbying for.
Once this goes through, either extension or passing an actual bill, will you come back and go through it with me? So, because I'm not going to have the capacity to break it down myself, but you'll know about and then this industry, and that come back and let's go over it once it's done.
I would love to. And actually, I think it'd be great to do, I don't know if you ever do a panel thing, but it'd be fun to have the other commodity groups come too. Because sugar is very different from how dairy and grain and potatoes are impacted by the farm bill.
You know what the problem with the panel is? Everybody thinks that more people on something like this would be better, but then you end up with something dumb like The View.
Oh.
Minus the crazy, well, not minus crazy people, but the point is it's so think about, you and I have been talking for 45 minutes straight, just you and me. Imagine adding one other person in. Right. Inevitably what happens is when you deal with two people that you're interviewing at the same time, you fall into a rhythm with one person, and then the other person is waiting to say the thing that they want to say. And then once the question goes to them, they insert their little thing, and then it's over. And then they're fall side. And it's just it's so good. And then even if you're doing a panel, it's okay, Sam, you have 5 minutes, right, to answer this question. And then you have to go through all the other. So by the time you get to the person at the end, they've been there for almost 20 minutes. They're oh my God. And everybody's hearing that after the second person, you've pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
And then the third person, and then fourth person. I love where your head's at. I would love to talk to these people individually. I have not been able to secure a potato farmer, actually, believe it or not. I've had people from dairy and cattle and
what?
Sugar beet. But
so the funny thing, Sugar Sam, that nickname came because the guy who does governmental affairs for the Idaho Potato Commission, his name is Sam. And so it'd be confusing in meetings when they'd say Sam, because we both look hey, well, which one? So I am Sugar Sam, and he is Spud Sam. So you need to have Spud.
Me up with Spud Sam.
Spud Sam would be great on the show.
I would love to talk to Spud Sam. It's one of those things where it's this is such an iconic, potato and Idaho go together. And why it's hard to get somebody to talk to me about that. Again, people don't know Idaho when they move here. And this is why, because nobody's ever heard from Spud Sam.
Spud Sam's
the people
fault.
want to hear from Spud Sam. At least I do anyway. Listen, you have things to do. Anything we've missed here?
No, I think we covered it. This was awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming in. I've really enjoyed this. And let's do it again. I really want to understand what's going on with the sugar beet industry after the farm bill gets passed, because ultimately, I talk to people about these things. I actually want to know, because these are the things that affect our lives. These are the things that are going to affect land prices. These are things that affect, our tax base, because our agriculture dumps and is a way net positive to residential individuals like me. These are things that affect our state. Everybody's so interested in these random, world events. Yeah, we should be concerned with world events, but I'm really concerned with what's happening here right now. So again, I really appreciate you coming in and helping me understand.
Well, thank you. And thanks for placing such an emphasis on agriculture. It's such an important industry in Idaho, and we just believe that food security is national security. So thanks for making an emphasis on ag. We need to be able to feed ourselves.
Yeah, isn't that true? Isn't Simplot, or no, Syngenta, that's our strategic seed supply. Isn't that owned by the Chinese? It is. You're nodding. See, we'll talk about this next time. Thanks for coming in, Sam.
All right. Thanks for having me.